Today, we're going to hear from Haley Townsend, who is the senior digital producer at NewsNation Now. That's the Nexstar equivalent of CNN, basically. It's based in our Chicago operation. They produce a primetime newscast and are adding shows as we speak, including a show which will premiere with Ashley Banfield. It's coming soon. Haley is from Birmingham, Alabama, where she attended UAB, University of Alabama in Birmingham, majored in English, professional writing, and public discourse, minored in business there. She worked at our CBS affiliate in Birmingham, WIAT, and then moved on to Columbus, Ohio, and now is in the big house at NewsNation. So Haley is going to be sharing with us today the secret sauce of supercharging your digital stories to reach as much audience as possible. And so, Haley, welcome. We are so excited to have you with us today, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks. I'm really excited to be here, and I asked Gene a little bit of background on the interns, and I hear most of you want to be MMJs, but not everyone. So there's a little point in my presentation where we'll dig into that, just so that I know, kind of what your goals are and what information I can give you so that you can, maximize it differently depending on what you want to be. So yeah, let's kick it off, I guess. You got the slideshow, Gene?
I do, and I will
All right.
share it. Let's roll.
Wonderful. All right, so I titled this Digital Matters. Here's how to make it work for you. Like Gene said, the secret sauce to crafting winning headlines, some SEO basics, and how you're going to reach your audience where they live, which you guys know, it's on digital. So just a slide about how I got here. So in 2014, I really didn't know what I wanted to be, like, to phrase it like when I grew up. I was a senior majoring in English, and I just kind of found news. Like, I was looking for an internship that had to do with copywriting or copy editing, and the student newspaper was looking for a copy editor, and that's how I got my foot in the door of news. Eventually, they were looking for an editor-in-chief, and by that time, I'd gotten the news bug, and there we went. And so after that, my old boss, who's actually now at our station in Nashville, Tennessee, he found me on LinkedIn. So if you're not using LinkedIn frequently, I highly recommend just be active on there and check your messages, because you never know who's going to drop in there. Because that's what happened to me. He just said, "Hi, I'm looking for a digital content producer. Would you be interested in applying?" And I'm like, "Well, yes, I would." So that's how I got my start at CBS 42, and then was promoted in about 10 months to an executive producer under him as a digital director. And then he went down the road and they promoted me to his job. And then, as Gene said, then I moved to Columbus, Ohio to lead our NBC4i digital team as the director. And now I am in Chicago, where it is nice and cold in the big house at NewsNation at the legacy WGN television station, which is really, really cool. And in July, we launched NewsNation. It was not a news organization that previously existed. And so I got to have a hand in just building something from the ground up, building a team, figuring out what our editorial strategy is, because the mission is no bias. And how are we going to accomplish that in a digital news world where everything, there's an instant deadline? So how do we put in all of the layers of editorial oversight and second set of eyes, and making sure that everything is on brand before it's published? And so that was a big challenge, and it's been rewarding. So next slide, we're gonna get into it. So in 2021, you all know digital outranks TV as the primary source of where all consumers across the world, and certainly in the US, get their news. It's social media, it's search engines like Google, it's TikTok, where people are getting their news these days. Next slide has a kind of breakdown of a survey that Reuters did in 2020 about sources used by internet users to access news. So digital, including social media. And these are bar charts. So comparing 2013 to 2020, and a lot's happened in those 7 years. So you can see that digital has actually sort of declined just a little bit. because social media is taking that leading front as a source of information. Print, obviously declining, my first love, and then television. You know, it's still holding strong. And so, one thing that we talk about a lot when I give guidance is that it's really cyclical. Digital and television, they go hand in hand. One promotes the other. When you work at a local television or national television news station, you want to remember the other as you're producing every day. So before we get to the good stuff, I do want to know what your career goal is. So if you just want to drop that in the chat, I want to know why you're here and what you see for yourself, you know, down the road and in 2 to 3 years. And then the next question, it's really just for you. I took probably the best class that I took in undergraduate was a course called Career Mapping, and it really made me think about like what environment I wanted to work in. There are just so many factors that go into a job that really makes you happy. Is it money that's your priority? Is it helping people? Is it, you know, you want to be in a newsroom where there's constant chaos and scanner traffic? Or do you want to be in a cubicle? So that was a really good course for me that just kind of helped me understand, like, you know, I want to be in a business where I know that what I'm doing is impacting, you know, good in communities. So just think about that, and then I'll check the chat in a moment and see what your goals are. All right, next slide. So digital matters, headlines. We're gonna have a simile here. So all parts of the digital story are important to its success. I heard Jean talk about social media posts that Rolanza did, and it was great to hear that you were talking about captions and the imagery, because all of that, those are like the staples. If we're talking about digital, like it's a hamburger, those have to be there. And the headline, however, is kind of like the advertisement that you see on the side of a highway for a business, but in the news world. This comparison works pretty well because digital audience is literally referred to as traffic. So you want to get digital traffic, and the headline is your method for advertising to your audience and all the different ways that they're getting their digital news, what your content is, why they should click on it, and why they should give you more than, you know, half a second of their time as they're scrolling through their news feed and everything is just jumping out at them. So you want your headline to be a hot now Krispy Kreme donut sign. And so that's what we're going to work on. Next slide. All right, so let's break down first the sources of digital traffic. There are several different, well, a number of different ways for your story to get traffic, but not all are equal. So direct traffic, that's when you go to newsnationnow.com directly. Internal traffic, that's when you're already on the site, maybe you got there another way, but you see another story, the headline, that interests you, so you click on it. So that's known as internal traffic. Organic search traffic, you're going to Google because you're like, what's the weather today? So you search Columbus, Georgia weather, and there pops up WRBL.com, and you're going to click on that and get your forecasts. Referral traffic. So that's when a website like NewsNation Now links to a story from WRBL.com. And when you're on NewsNation Now, you click on that link and then you go to WRBL.com. And then social traffic, an example, when Elizabeth White shares a WRBL.com article to her Facebook page and I see it and I click on it in my feed. So I talked a little bit about how not all of those traffic sources are equal. When you're on digital, you want to build a loyal audience, which means you want the people to come back. Just like if you're a newscast producer or you're a news director, you want people to watch your newscast more than, you know, once when they're like, wow, why is there a traffic on my way to work? Or you want them to be loyal viewers and repeat viewers and come back, you know, ideally 2 to 3 times a day, I think is like that pie in the sky goal for the broadcast side of things. And digital, I mean, we want you to just live on our website. So realistic or not. So social traffic, we saw that slide earlier, that breakdown. everyone's getting their news from social traffic, but that's actually your least loyal audience. Your most loyal audience is your direct traffic. So people that, may have your website saved as their, what do they even call it? Like the browser homepage, like you can choose, mine's just Google by default, but you always know when you transition over a website and like there's a radical change, the people who are the loyalists are like, why does my homepage look different? Like you get the email feedback. So they pay attention. Those are your most loyal viewers. Search traffic viewers are also very loyal. They spend more time on your website, which means they have more of an opportunity to see more of those headlines on your site, consume more of your news, perhaps see a promo, then tune into your newscast. So you really want to develop an audience that keeps coming back and keeps looking at your content and seeing that it has a high value to them for what they're looking for in their very busy day to day. All right, next slide. So some headline basics. Things to keep in mind, the facts, first and foremost, and journalistic standards. A lot of what we see maybe in years past, the algorithms change, the social media giants are trying to combat some of that clickbait and misinformation that can kind of just surface in the feeds just because of the way that it's written. It can really target, people's they call it like a groundswell, like misinformation somehow spreads faster than the truth these days. But clickbait, while it might get traffic, it's not good journalism. So an example of this that I've seen recently was vaccine deaths. So across the world, people are starting to administer the coronavirus vaccinations. And in Norway, I think they reported some 20 deaths. And the people who died, they were all elderly. They were all in nursing homes. They were very fragile. But I saw a local news media just kind of pick up on that press release, and the way that they titled the story was really unethical. It just said, 20 deaths after coronavirus vaccinations in Norway. It did not give the context that you need to include when you're talking about something that's that critical for public health. And ethically, I was just like, well, that's an example of what not to do. Another thing to always be on the lookout for is when you're reporting crime, you've got to take caution not to convict someone who's innocent until they're proven guilty. And that's definitely a typo there, until provide guilty. Um, so, when you're writing a headline, you've got limited space. It's kind of like when you're writing the lower third or the chyron for on air. You want to, make it snappy. You want to have it not give away your whole entire story, but still be a good descriptor of it. And like we referenced earlier, you want it to be appealing and get traffic from that headline. So a lot of the time it feels really easy to write a headline that might accidentally convict someone. That's I've had interns before, and I'll say, all right, take this press release and write this up for a web story. And that's the feedback that I find most often comes up, is just how do you frame a headline so that it's snappy, it's interesting, but it doesn't convict someone. And then another thing, we talk about SEO traffic being very loyal. How would you personally, or your friend or your mom, how would they Google to find the story that you're writing? So that's when we talk about keywords. Those are the words that people are typing in the search engine when they are trying to find, what's the weather today, or how can I watch the impeachment trial of President Trump? So you want to think, how would the average person summarize your story in their quick day-to-day when they're just trying to find it? And that can be kind of tricky, especially when you're just starting out and you are trying to take caution not to convict someone that's innocent until proven guilty. And you're also trying to limit the cop speak and the legalese like you would in a package script. You're trying to talk on someone's level, but also meet all of the standards. It can be really tricky, but one of the things that I like to do, it's a term from just being an English major and doing creative writing, but it's the phrase called workshopping. So you come up with a headline and you say to your coworker, hey, how does this sound? And they're like, oh, well, I think it could be like, let's put this word here and let's take that part off. And in this virtual world that we're living in now with the pandemic, it's easier than ever to workshop because everyone's on, some instant messenger. So Nexstar uses Teams, others use Slack. But when you're working specifically for digital, that's a really great way to just get kind of like that instant feedback and that second set of eyes on what you're writing. And I personally love doing that. Like, how can we make this push more punchy? And we just kind of go back and forth and we're like, oh, well, let's write the title like this and the copy like this. And the featured image could be, we've used that featured image all day of the power outages in Texas. Let's switch it up to one that's a little bit more compelling. So always just, even after graduation, even now, like always seeking feedback from everyone else that's in the room is really, really valuable. So I'll take a minute and check the chat, and so we can kind of talk about what you guys are here for. Okay, so from Grace. Grace is here because she feels a calling to share the truth with people and connect with people through content. Sharing the reality around us, whether soft or harsh, is so important. Absolutely. Career goal is to become a well-established photojournalist equipped with confidence and ability to travel and cover monumental events within our country. My goals to get there is to network like a mad woman and really push my portfolio out of its comfort zone. Ryan, I have always wanted to tell stories and be able to use my voice and presence to make a difference. I've always felt that local news, especially politics, is very overlooked. Absolutely. But it's really what impacts lives on a daily basis. Ryan wants to start as a local news MMJ down south. Ooh, Syracuse weather. With the goal of working through the pipeline to rise to a higher market. Making your career, eventually working in Miami. You want the hectic, chaotic newsroom. I love the chaotic newsroom myself. It just keeps me kind of like energized. Like I feed off the energy of everyone else just kind of buzzing around, and breaking news adrenaline is just fun. So Ryan's mother left her role as an AP in Miami to move to New York and work at CBS. Wow. And Mary Beth, you won't be making the same mistake. Okay.
Absolutely not. We have 2 feet of snow on the ground here.
Oh gosh. Yep. The snow is it's tough. As a Southern girl in snow, I don't do that well with it. And Jenna says, out of college, I want to work as an MMJ in local news. Eventually, I'd like to work for a national morning news show. Yes, I love the idea of doing something like The American Story with Bob Dotson. I love that. Samantha would love to be working as an MMJ or in entertainment. Developed a passion for news and entertainment while in college. Love to make it a career. Hope to learn to use the skills learned in college and in this internship to work my way up to network that values unique voices and stories. Hannah, a career aspiration is to tell the stories of those in my community, enjoy local news because it's highly personal. Someday work as an international news correspondent, that'd be cool. Enjoy traveling and raising awareness for untold stories. Oh, Carly goes to the University of Montevallo, yes. And I did, yes, CBS 42. You worked there for a short time over Christmas break as an assignment editor. That's a great way to get your foot kind of in the door of news, is as a part-time assignment editor. But you found out it's not for you. It is definitely very high stress. You would like to end up in Nashville at some point and become an anchor. That's awesome. All right, Rolanzia. You've always wanted to tell stories, and believe you have a gift, and you like listening to stories as well. You want to build that trust within broadcast journalism and sports broadcasting. Love sports and entertainment. You want to pursue a career in sports anchoring and reporting. Your goal is just to find networking, find the right connections and show off your talent in the best way you can. Ryan has 2 friends that work at CBS 42 now and love it. That is awesome. Oh man, a lot of my friends are still at CBS 42, and I talked to some of them yesterday actually. They're all doing well. All right, well, awesome. That is super helpful for me to know kind of where all of you are coming from and how I can help you get there. All right. So for those of you that are wanting to be an MMJ, even anchoring and reporting in small markets, hopefully they're always challenging you to contribute to web, because like we saw on that slide, you really have an ability to make an impact to your audience on digital 24/7, whereas a newscast, has a very specific time that it gets to air unless there's breaking news and you're going to wall to wall. I just really want to encourage you all to just think of digital as a great way to connect and develop a loyal audience that crosses all of the platforms. I think that people that follow you on social media, I talked about the social media referral traffic, and maybe those viewers aren't as loyal, but the audience that you as like talent can develop a following on social media, those people will be your loyal followers for probably your whole career. There are people that started following me in Birmingham, and like I'm not on air. Like I get like bylines sometimes, but they'll like message me, they'll comment on my pictures like, "Hi Haley, I hope you're having a wonderful day." And I'm like, "Thanks, Forrest." So there, it's social media is a great place if you're wanting to be an MMJ or a reporter, to really just find that audience, connect with them and engage with them, which 10 years ago was not a thing. But y'all are like, we know this. All right. So one thing that I like to challenge reporters is to write your web headline before you write or edit your package. So you're always thinking of, oh, what's the best shot? Like, am I going to open with the best sound? Well, what's your headline? Your headline's going to tell you, everything that is the best of your story without giving it all away, which is, kind of how you want to open your package if you're writing it. So that is one thing that I challenge reporters to do. Level up. Can you pitch me a story with just a headline? I've worked with a news director before that's how he ran the morning meeting. That's how the reporters were supposed to pitch their stories, just with a headline. And it was definitely like a big adjustment to them. He was like an interim news director, and they went from, having like 7 minutes to be able to just like ramble on, well, I talked to this person and I think, if I could get this person, and like they just had to like, this is my headline, this is the story. And if you pitch that headline and you're not like, oh man, yeah, I would click on that headline, well, why are we going to do the story? And so you can pretty much, it's like a gut check, like, is that story interesting or not? You can tell by the headline. So that's my challenge to you. If there's a story idea that you have in mind, pitch it to me in a headline, and I'll give you feedback on that headline. And that's my email. It's just H Townsend, H first letter, last name, at nextstar.tv. I've had that one for 5 years. All right, now we can go to the next slide. Okay, so we're going to kind of dig into headline writing a little bit, just by looking at one of my favorite headlines that also did like a ton of traffic. It's actually really funny. I was like filling in as the late shift producer, 4 p.m. to midnight, and it was a Friday night at like 11 o'clock, and like everyone got force logged out of Facebook. Like I'm just like working away, and I go to Facebook and I see this Facebook post from the chief meteorologist at CBS 42, and she's like, did Facebook just log everybody out? And I see like 90 comments. Everyone's like, oh, it did that to me. What's happening? Are we being hacked? I'm like, oh gosh, what's happening? Are we being hacked? Because it happened to me too. Like I just like looked at my phone and it had forced me out, and it made me log back in, which thankfully I, had my password saved. Most people do, some people don't. So I'm seeing all of this unfold on social media. There are no web write-ups, there are no articles on it yet. So I'm like, I think I should probably, write this up. Also at the time, we're getting some strange data miners. So data miner is a tool that some news organizations subscribe to, and it mines data literally from Twitter, from Reddit, from government sources. And if you have the NewsNation Now app, because we are a fresh startup and we're hungry, a lot of the times we are the first to push breaking news. So Ruth Bader Ginsburg, we pushed her death first. Trump diagnosed with coronavirus, we were the first to push that. And data miner is one of those reasons, because we get these alerts and it's like, oh, well, this is breaking. Well, let's immediately, jump right on it and get it out. So I was getting some Facebook data miners too. People took to Twitter literally to complain about Facebook, because that's what you do these days. Facebook app, if you can see in the screenshot of this article that I wrote, that's a embedded tweet of Facebook tweeting about Facebook because that's what they use to put out statements about Facebook. They don't post it on Facebook, they post it on Twitter. So Twitter is just a buzz. Everyone's like, are we being hacked? What's happening? So I'm checking social media and I'm seeing what people are calling this phenomenon. So they're calling it a forced logout. They're calling it things similar to that. So that, plus the knowledge that people typically Google questions, kind of like they're saying, Alexa, what's the weather today? They'll go to Google and they'll type in a question like it's going to, give them a written answer like a person would. And so that was that was the ingredients to my secret sauce for that headline, which was a very casually written web article late at night. I kind of got a little strange in there. Like I talked in the first person. I was like, oh, I went to social media and this is what I saw. And what else do you put it in this article? Like you've just been pushed off Facebook and then you logged back in. So this post got over 800,000 page views in like several days across the country. And so here's a challenge. How would you title this article? It could be better. It really could. Something that I want to note is that it's a little tricky to talk in future terms about SEO specifics, because every station owner group uses a different CMS. So next our own stations, we use WordPress, but different CMSs may have different features. So for example, we have different like headline fields. So I can write a social media headline, I can write an SEO headline, and I can write a headline that only you see when you're on our homepage. So the thinking there is SEO headline, you're going to write it more in the terms of what people are going to Google. A homepage headline, you're going to write it with more of like a tease, like, oh, I'm really going to make you click on this. I'm not going to give away all of the information in the homepage headline. And the social headline can be a little bit more trendy, more concise, more buzzy. So here's my challenge to you. Just kind of Google some keywords that come to your mind if Facebook did what it did that late Friday night. And then I would like you to come up with a headline for this article, and then we will discuss some of them. So let's give it, what do we think, like 3 minutes? 3 minutes to do some Googling, and then drop your headline ideas in the chat, and we'll just read over some of them, and we can talk about it. And yeah. All right, we'll give it another minute or so here. All right, so we've got one suggestion. I think this is from Gene. His headline suggestion: Facebook forced logout, why did you get ejected from the app? I like it. That uses the kind of the technique of putting the keywords at the front end of the headline, which is always a great way to structure a headline, to get those keywords right at the front and then use that colon. So for example, as we covered the Trump impeachment trial, that story every day had Trump impeachment trial live stream at the front, and then colon, and then a description of what was happening that day, just to make sure that those keywords were in there. Yara, I'm not sure how to say your name. I'm sorry. I'm definitely mispronouncing it because I'm horrible at that. And that's why I would literally never be on air.
Right. You said it right.
Oh, good. Were you logged out of your Facebook account on Friday? Here's why. Perfect. Yes. Grace forgot password. Logout spikes hacking conspiracy among users. Yes. Samantha forced Facebook logout. Why you were logged out on Friday. I like that you guys are incorporating what day it happened into your headlines. Mysterious Facebook logout. No, you weren't hacked. Jenna, yes, I like that one too. Facebook locks out thousands. Why you can't access your timeline. Yeah. Massive Facebook logout leaves users suspicious. Indeed they were. I mean, I just loved my favorite part of this story is that the Bernie memes collided with like the Facebook conspiracy theories. Like, it just the perfect time, like when I needed a laugh. All right, so let's see. I like all of these, and I like that. Did Mark Zuckerberg forget his password? All of these are great. So yes, going back to kind of what I was saying, Facebook logout, putting that at the front part of your headline is great. Jenna's headline with the word mysterious in it gives kind of that, oh, I should click on this. It was mysterious, but I wasn't hacked. Well, let me click on it and make sure. Samantha's headline lets me know I'm going to learn why I was logged out on Friday. This is going to be helpful. Forgot password, logout spikes, hacking conspiracy among users. Grace, I would suspect that your copy would probably be written a little bit different than mine. which is totally fine. You know, I took kind of like just a like, what's happening here angle to it. But it's actually funny. The news director at our station in Mobile, he started working on a write-up of the article as I did. And like, we kind of knew that each other were working on it. And like, it was on my back burner and it was on his back burner. And his headline had the word mystery in it, and he went more down the angle of the conspiracy path. Like, he was like, some people are like, well, what happened here?
That's literally me. Like, I love conspiracy theories in a way. Like, I love to see the ridiculous things that people come up with, and I love to see it either A, be proven true or debunked. So like, this just screams like mass hysteria, like, oh, the media is trying to get rid of our freedom of speech. Like, no, it is totally, it's so fun to see. And like, I love to go down that little, the mystery is in the conspiracy aspect. So I totally get where he's coming from in that aspect for sure.
And it definitely got clicks. His got a lot of traffic too. Mine got more traffic because I shared it to all our stations.
When I was looking up things, I actually saw your article pop up. Like, you were like number 4 on the list. And I was like, Haley.
Yeah.
Awesome.
See the SEO, it worked. It was pretty solid. But that's the cool thing about working for Nexstar, specifically in digital, is that we have so many stations that in our CMS, we have the ability to share those stories to all the stations. So then they get to have that headline on their website, and I get a byline on Cron and WKRG and WRBL. And I did a little bit of that before, before we had NewsNation. Just, you know, we all tried to kind of like work together, just like, oh, here's this trending article, like who can take this on. And now that like we have this national news entity, we get to really reach way more of an audience than I would have ever anticipated, that like that many people would read my like late night rambles. Like, that's literally what that article is.
It's so cool to see. Like, way to go, seriously.
Thank you. Like, oh, apparently I should be a tech reporter. I should just digital management. I'm done.
I love it.
So what else do we have here? Yeah, Ryan's headline was great too. You use the word locks out. So you know, we could have used multiple versions of this, kind of like I talked about with the social media headline. We could have gone with like the mystery angle. We could have done a Twitter headline, and then we could have done a Facebook headline. So we started seeing the traffic, obviously, as soon as we posted the article to Facebook, because like that was, that's who was wondering, like, what's going on? What's happening here? So all of this is great. This is fun. All right, next slide, I think. All right, so this is my hot take. When you start out as an MMJ in a smaller market, you're going to have a lot to do. But my challenge to you is that you should put as much effort into digital as you do into TV. Your digital article is a really fantastic place to just expand on the story that you're telling in your TV package. And the internet is not limited to 1 minute and 15 seconds, which, you know, I've worked with some reporters who will send me their web article like 2 hours after their shift ended, but it's like they wrote a novel. Like they took all of this time and they just really wanted to put all of this information into their web story. And then there are reporters that they literally they send me their broadcast script. And there are reasons why you should take extra time to write a different version for the web than you would write for broadcast. So when we talk about Google, when we talk about SEO, Google looks at different parts of an article and they apply weight to them. And the body copy part is an important part. So when you write for television, you know, you're using sound, you're writing to video, but on digital, instead of writing to video, you can write to imagery that you incorporate as images within the copy. Another thing to keep in mind, one thing that I'll see frequently is like the thought, like people will write their web stories like a sentence is a paragraph, like sentence and then a sentence and then a sentence. And Google actually dings you for that. You like, it wants to see that there's like paragraphs of like density and like, you know, that thought has been put into the article. There's, you know, it wants to see, I think like at least 180 words, but ideally it's in that 400 to 600 word range that you're, you know, putting out into that web article. And then when we go back to just like SEO basics, we're talking about the keywords. When you're writing your lead for your digital story, you're probably going to want it to be different than what you would say on television, because you want to pack those keywords into your lead so that, because the lead in most CMS systems, now you'll have to ask your web manager at your station when you get hired how their system works, but most CMSs take the like lead portion, or what is known as the excerpt, and it automatically pulls that as the meta description. And that's what Google reads as like, this is the summary of what that article is about. So it's really important to focus on that very first paragraph for many reasons. I mean, that's how you get your viewer to say, oh, I'm going to keep reading this article after the lead, or they're not, they're going to click away. And it's also how you tell Google what your story is about. So you should definitely put effort into the lead, into the headline, into the featured image of the article, which is, you know, what you would see like when you're doing a link post on social media. That's how that featured image on the social feed gets in there, and you always want that image to be really compelling. A best practice that I like to share is, you know, if you're clipping from your broadcast package and you didn't plan ahead, like what I really hope to instill in everyone is that still photography. Like if you're somewhere and you're shooting a story and you can just snap a picture with your phone and you use it for social media content to like tweet about what you're reporting on that day or post on Facebook, then the digital team or you yourself later can use that as the featured image for your article. Whereas maybe you don't take a picture, you're having to like take a still frame from the video that you shot, and it's not going to be as high resolution. It's not going to look as nice on the website and on social media. But let's say you forgot to take a picture with your phone. I always recommend just cropping out the lower third for the featured image, just because all of those words on the image, they just kind of make the website look jumbled, and it presents just aesthetically cleaner and nicer and more compelling. Next slide, I think. All right. Well, the formatting didn't come across very nicely on this. So more SEO things. So I've kind of talked about some of this already. Much of SEO is specific to the CMS that you're working in, which CMS is a content management system. As far as categories, primary categories, tags, and metadata. So just to dive in a little bit on categories, primary categories, and tags. So different websites will have a different like type of tag system. There is like in our WordPress system, there's just like a place where you can tag your story. So let's say you're reporting in, I'm just going to use an Ohio county, in Franklin County, and your web manager has a tagging system by county. So you're filing a crime report and you're going to tag it as Franklin County crime. You don't just want to just tag kind of willy-nilly, because like our CMS, what you do when you create a tag, it actually creates like a page that curates all of the stories that have been tagged with those specific words. So I could then go to nbc4i.com/tag/Franklin County crime, and all of the stories that are tagged as Franklin County crime get pulled up as that. But Google does like that. It likes that tagging curation system. But NewsNation, we, for the most part, don't use tags, except for when there's kind of like breaking news and we don't think it rises to the precedent of like creating a like whole category for it. So like on our homepage, We have a category called like Biden 100 days. We had a Trump impeachment category. Categories are really important in the whole SEO scheme of things. And you want to think about categories in the terms of what people are Googling and the keywords that they're using to find what they're looking for. And then we get into one of the really, really critical parts when we're talking about writing your lead and writing your body copy of your web story, and that is links. So you always want to link back to any related coverage in the copy of your story. That's called natural language linking. So when we talked about the lead and writing it, using those keywords for your story, let's say we're talking about the Trump impeachment trial. So in the lead, obviously, I'm going to use the words Trump impeachment trial in the lead to talk about the Trump impeachment trial. In the words where I write Trump impeachment trial, I'm going to link back to the category page for the Trump impeachment trial on NewsNation now. So that tells Google that those keywords and that link that's hyperlinked on those keywords are the same. So it like bumps it up in the Google ranking system as, oh, this is for this. So you want to keep that in mind when you're writing your stories, that any previous coverage that you've done, you want to include as a hyperlink, not just so that your audience can see your previous coverage, but also so that Google knows it's all connected, so that when people Google those keywords, all of those stories come up for it. So like links, they're all linked together. So that's kind of the thinking behind that. Now, the best advice that I can give to reporters when you're starting out is to befriend your web manager and your producers on your first day. In the starter markets, all the way up to national news, I promise, they're stretched pretty thin. And anytime you can help break a story first on digital, you will be their hero. Like if you're like, Haley, I have this source and he told me this, but I'm already assigned this story for television. I can write you up a few paragraphs and email it to you. Like you are the best. You are literally the best. And then let's say like you're just starting out in a newsroom, like you're getting your foot in the door as an assignment editor. Digital will, like if you're like, hey, I'll write that up for digital, they're never going to be like, no, please don't. And that's how you can get bylines. That's how you can get, published examples of your work to add to your portfolio before you're able to, get on TV. It's a great way to just get your name out there and start working in content and telling stories, even if it's not on video.
Can I share a quick anecdote about that real quick, Haley?
Absolutely.
And I got to tell you, I was on the first, in this particular instance, I was wrong. And I'm so glad that this individual persisted. Brand new production assistant, freshman in college, and zero writing experience, has connections to esports leagues in Europe and Great Britain. He actually directs their competitions online, right? And so he had a contact who'd been banned from Twitch because this person started their account before they were 13 years old and lied about it, how old they were. So Twitch has been going through just purging all these people that are now of age, but they started their accounts years ago, but when they were underage and under their terms of a service, they lied about their age, right? So this guy had 500,000 followers or something and got banned from Twitch. So this production assistant said, I want to do this story. And he started the pitch with, I want to do a package about it, a video package. So I said, well, slow down. I've not seen any of your writing, but, do the Zoom interview, work with our digital producer and produce the story. And then once we're sure it's all accurate and everything, then we'll see about the video package and the article. He did an incredible job with it, did a really good interview, wrote a solid first draft, and did a really good package. And so working with Sam, our digital producer, packaged it all up and got a byline. And he's still a freshman in college, and that I think is his very first professional byline. So his persistence really paid off, and we got a good piece of content that had legs all over the world. So
yeah, that sounds great. I need to read that. Awesome. Yeah, like digital will never never say no to content that you can help contribute, or if you pitch a story and the news director is not hot on it for television, it may work really well on digital, but it's not visual enough, or it's not going to have people that want to go on camera, or even on Zoom, or even a phoner at this point. You can do more with less on digital than you can with television, but there are still really important stories to be told that maybe don't make TV. All right, what's the next slide? I don't remember. Oh, we're at the questions point. Any questions? And then the next slide is just pictures of me and my career. I would have joined with my camera, but I had a sick dog to take care of this morning and did not even have time to brush my hair. I'm just being honest.
Nobody raising their hand, or okay, there, Grace, go ahead.
Haley, I was just curious. This is more like this is a very easy, lighthearted question. What are your socials, and how can we follow you and keep up with your journey and be able to tag you in this experience today?
Sure. So I'm not like a super social media poster of my personal self. I do have a Facebook page, but it's really more so for I'll do test Facebook lives to test new products.
Okay.
But that is facebook.com/ I think Haley WGNA, or WGNA Haley. I'm not positive. Twitter, I very rarely tweet. Honestly, the place where I post the most is my Facebook profile, which is just Haley Townsend. You're welcome to friend me, because one thing that I will recommend to all of you that are wanting to become reporters is having a Facebook profile that and not a page, a profile, so that you can send messages and respond to messages from it. That is public friendly. Your grandmother would approve of absolutely everything on your Facebook page. Doesn't contain any opinions. That one's hard for me. But I've maintained that the Facebook profile that I have, you're all welcome to follow me on it. I think it's just Facebook, or friend me at facebook.com/ Haley M. Townsend. So one of the best ways that I got story ideas when I was still in local news was Facebook groups. And I think now they've kind of opened it up to where you can comment more easily from pages, talent pages. But at the time, it was just me. It was just me in this Facebook profile. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry to hear, your tractor was stolen. Would you like to talk to me? And CBS 42. And so I would get a lot of story ideas that I would then pass on to reporters from just those hyper local Facebook community groups, what's happening in Walker County, and all of those things. There's of course a ton of bickering and reports of strange vehicles driving through people's neighborhoods, but there's also one of the hardest stories I've ever told in my life, and one of the stories I'm most proud of, I got from a Facebook community group from a town right over from where I lived at the time, in Alabaster, Alabama. A teenager had been driving, and she was texting while she was driving, but that was not known. And she rear-ended an 18-wheeler and was killed in a horrific crash. It was in the middle of the night. All of the local news stations missed the crash. We heard about it the next day. We're trying to, cover it with file VO of flashing lights. I see people conspiracy theory posting in these Facebook groups, what happened to lead to this horrific crash? I see her aunt speaks up in the thread, and she said, I can confirm Cameron was texting and driving. And so I reached out to her aunt and I said, I'm so sorry, would you want to tell her story? And so she got me connected with her mother, Michelle, and we broke that story. We published it and pushed it out right as we did a Facebook Live with the mom, who was telling her story for the first time. And she actually, I encouraged her after I said, I said, this is how you get in contact with the other local media because you need to tell this story. And then I said, and I'm here if you ever want to talk. Like, the crash was just so awful. And now she's like, she speaks in high schools. She is a proponent of trying to get legislation passed in Alabama that would be the Alabama hands-free law. So that is my like biggest example of why you should have a Facebook profile where you can message people from, because you can get some really compelling stories from Facebook groups that hopefully will save people's lives. That's why I'm in this. But I'll drop the chat link to my Facebook profile, and you guys can friend me.
I'm also-
And I occasionally post.
Okay. I'm also sending I put a lot of your stuff in the invitation to today's meeting in Outlook, but I'm sending an email right now to provide that information, including the URL to your Facebook profile as well, Haley.
Perfect. All right. Other questions?
I'll ask one on behalf of the group that was asked in a previous meeting, which I thought was a really good question. Ryan, I'm going to take your question from our previous meeting, if you don't mind. What advice would Haley give to her younger self on the eve of entering our business?
Oh gosh. Stick with it. Stick with it and don't give up. And when it, like, the days that feel the hardest, like, the light at the end of the tunnel is going to be there the next day. I've covered some really hard stuff. One of those was Hurricane Michael that hit the Panama City area and made landfall in Mexico Beach. If you want to go to the next slide, Jean, I have a picture in the lower left-hand corner. That is Mexico Beach 2 weeks after Hurricane Michael made landfall as a Category 5 storm. And that was probably the hardest point of my career. I went down there with no notice. They were like, we need you to go. And 2 hours later I was on the road. And actually Connor, who's at WRBL, also went down there. And he was in the booth with me when Vice President Mike Pence was touring Tyndall Air Force Base, and I was doing the live stream while texting the reporter when to go live and adjusting the TVU bit rate so that it would stop breaking up. And there was no news director in the building. It was just me and him in charge in a newsroom that was not our own. And after that, I went out in the parking lot and I cried. I hysterically cried because it was just so, it was so hard to drive around and see all of these homes devastated and these trees piled up taller than people. And I had gone down there on such short notice that I didn't bring cash. I thought I was gonna be staying out of the disaster zone, but I was staying in the disaster zone. I was not prepared. And I started crying because I didn't have any food. I didn't know what I was gonna eat for lunch. And I didn't have any cash, and businesses were only accepting cash, and all I had was my debit card. And I was just so overwhelmed. But literally 3 weeks later, a news director that I had worked with there offered me a job in Columbus, Ohio. And it was the next step up in my career. This industry is exhausting. I made a post last night just because I've seen on a national level, now that I'm not standing in it, I'm watching all of my friends, out in Texas that don't have power and are having to boil their water, and they're working overtime, and they're still working to bring all of that information to those communities. And I've kind of been in that myself. And so I know that they've got to be weary at this point. But it's such an important job. You can't let up, but you do have to just give yourself grace that yes, I'm human, and if I need to cry, I can cry, and then I'm gonna go find some food somewhere, and then I'm gonna go back to work. I'm gonna keep at it. Okay, so we've got a question. Have I ever felt at a crossroads with my career between what I truly wanted to do and talk about versus what was being presented or available to you? Let's see, between what you really want to do. I think I've been like really lucky in my career that I have had opportunities that really aligned with what I wanted to be doing. But I know that not everyone is as fortunate as I have been. And so there are people that have had to, make compromises, and maybe you take a job as assignment desk when you really want to be a reporter. And I think that, kind of just going back to what we talked about earlier, no matter what your job title may be at the time, you can be telling stories regardless. You can be pitching them, you can be writing them yourselves. With the internet the way it is, you can start your own social media pages now as a source of news and be a news reporting journalist without being employed by a television station. One of the girls that I worked with in Panama City, sorry, the sick dog is crying. I'm gonna pick him up. She eventually kind of got out of the business, and she's a mom now, but she still keeps a website where she writes about local news in the communities that she served when she was on television, and she maintains her social media and just she keeps doing what she loves to do, even if she's not being paid for it. And I think that that's something that's really helpful to keep in mind. Do I know anyone who may be in sports broadcasting to give some advice on how to get into that type of industry? I will tell you that the sports broadcasting industry is probably a little bit tougher to get into than just like general assignment reporting. And so starting there is never a bad thing. I would also say looking at digital positions in sports is a great way to get your foot in the door. So Nexstar at the time last year was doing kind of this digital first expansion, and I hired like a digital only sports reporter. Well, guess what? He ended up anchoring on the weekends because the sports anchor went on to host our lifestyle show. And so he got tons of airtime. But I've had the opportunity. I'm not in sports. I've covered the Super Bowl. I've gone to the Super Bowl. I've gone to SEC media days multiple times and kind of gotten to cover it on the ground, be in the room with, I'm an Alabama fan. I know you guys cover Auburn. Be in the room with Nick Saban. And write up his comments live. And as soon as we're rolling on them and I'm cutting them for for digital, and I'm writing storylines and pushing them out before ESPN. So, I think that digital is an opportunity that maybe gets overlooked in the glamour of television, but you have an opportunity to cover a lot of different things, and you never know who's going to see your sports reporting on digital and say she should be on air reporting with that analysis. Grace, do you feel like your position with NewsNation is a permanent place, or do you have another next step you want to pursue? So I'll be honest in that I did not want this NewsNation job. They asked me. Corporate called me and they said, are you interested in national news and moving to Chicago? Because I have the flexibility. I don't have really ties other than like my parents live in Atlanta. And so they already knew that I was like in Columbus, Ohio, and I was like looking for a next step. And so I was like, I don't know, like, I really don't want to live in Chicago. Like, I really wanted to move like closer to the South for my next move. But I mean, that's an opportunity that I can't really just like write off.
Yeah.
And so this is definitely not a permanent position for me. One of my biggest goals in my career has been just to help shape the other journalists within our company and brainstorm ideas of how we can more efficiently produce digital content. And you know, I was in Panama City. I've helped our Nashville station. In 2020, they had Super Tuesday elections, and they also had devastating tornadoes in downtown Nashville. I went and I helped with that. And like those opportunities, that's what I like really love. Like if I could create the job for myself, it would be like some sort of like regional digital manager that gets to like really help everyone, because everyone needs help in this industry. Like we're all like, these newsrooms are like, you know, there's as many people in them as they're allowed to have, but like there could always be more. So I really like the ability to just share my knowledge and help in times of crisis. And so if that's something that I ever get to do, that's what I would like to do next. From Hannah. Yeah. What advice would I give? Oh, this dog is crying. What advice would I give to college graduates trying to get their foot in the door in news? Majority of job posts online say that reporters should have 2 to 5 years experience. Where should recent college graduates start? Come here, Charlie. Come here. Oh, goodness. So I think that you should start by trying to get some of that experience while you're still in college. So you're obviously getting some of it now in this internship, the student newspaper, like I mentioned. You know, the job that I got out of college was one of those jobs that wanted two to something years experience, but I will tell you, the way the job market is now, they will hire people straight out of college. Even when they say they're looking for 2 years experience. Don't let the experience deter you from applying, but have in your mind and on your resume experience reporting. Maybe it's not at a professional level, maybe it's for the student newspaper, maybe it's just your own website that you've started and you're filing reports a couple times a week. That's experience. That shows that, you know, you have you know, put your best foot forward and given everything that you had to try and get as much experience as you can. And a lot of the smaller markets now, I've never hired MMJs. Like that's not what I'm doing, but I have hired digital producers, and I've hired them fresh out of college, even at a market, actually even in national news. I have a producer that we hired straight out. She was out of grad school, but she had never worked at a professional level before. She just had a bunch of internships. And you know, that's probably like surprising to most people that like at a national news level, we would hire someone that's like right out of school. But we see it as a way to invest in people, to grow their knowledge and experience. And if you can find a news organization that sees inexperience not as a negative, but as a like a fresh starting point, you should find something. Hopefully that's an answer.
If I can offer one just anecdote, which I've offered to these guys and others in their senior year, is don't say no to yourself. Make someone else say no to you. So if a job listing says 2 years of experience required, simply ignore it and apply and go after it with all full force. There's a caveat on that which says, you know, you're unlikely to land a job reporting for ESP on the sidelines right out of school. So use some common sense in terms of, you know, thinking about which jobs you might have a shot at, but apply for jobs that are at and or above your current comfort level. And certainly if there are caveats in the job listing or description which say 2 years of experience needed, and it's a beginning level job, chances are that job description and posting was not even written by the news director, and it's a file posting that they've been using for like 5 years and never updated. So just ignore it. And if a job posting says no phone calls, ignore that too. Follow up by phone call and email. Persist. Yep. You can break in.
That is true. That is a very good point.
Well, we're at 11, coming up on 11:45, and we want to be respectful of your time, Haley. This is wonderful. Such great information, such specific and actionable stuff to implement on our web stories to make sure that the great stories we're telling are getting in front of as many fans as possible. And so thank you again for being so generous in inviting the interns to connect with you on Facebook as well and begin conversing with you there. Any final thoughts before we let you get on with your day?
Just do good news, y'all. You're gonna make a change in the world, and I'm proud to have spent just a tiny bit of time with you.